last bit of chapter 15 that we're going to cover today. Are you now viewing the slides with me?
Yes.
Why do you think that there would be a section on the environment in a chapter on economic policy? Why would they have economic and environment together? Did anybody think that when you started reading the chapter? Well, as you can see by this awesome Venn diagram, the environment incorporates our ecology, which would deal with our air and water and land, including all of the animal and plant life. But also we don't, none of us just lives on a mountain by ourselves, living off the land, catching fish and drinking water from the spring. We live in society with other people, and we have to, unless you just totally live on deer meat and fish and things like that, you have to go to the store and buy your food. And you get mail from the Postal Service. So there's society with schools and other stores and things like that. And then also is the economy, which we have been studying so far, how there are businesses and there's the market. And so you have producers and business owners, and then you have consumers who buy the goods, and you have people who work for the business owners. And all three of these systems are within the larger system of the environment. So that's how the environment is related to the economy. The economy is actually a system within our environment. And what happens to the environment is related to the economy, in that if you'll look there on the bottom of page 455, for example, if a company, for example, let's say a car company in Detroit, they're cranking out 100 cars a day, and from a distance you can see the car company, the manufacturer, the factory. You can see these billows of smoke coming out of these factories going up into the air. That affects the air quality, and government will put regulations on these factories to, cut down on the pollution going into the air. So that'll cost money. And so the factory will then increase the price of the cars. And so that affects you, and you have to pay more money. And so what we're talking about here is described as externalities on the bottom of page 455. These are effects that come from the production of goods or the consumption of goods. Other examples that are listed are, let's say, a beach in California starts getting more and more plastics and other waste washed up on the shore. And it starts to spread onto a part of the beach that's well known to be a tourist attraction, a very popular beach for swimming and for surfing. And so now they're going to have to pay more money to people to clean up the beach. And so these are costs that arise because of the production or consumption of goods, these externalities. And so it's going to cost something and somebody to help keep the environment safe and to clean it up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, before the big push for environmental protection, you had factories piping their waste into the ocean or into lakes. Even in LaFleur County, close to home where you all live, chicken farms were allowing their waste to go into Wister Lake. Wister Lake was a source of water. I don't know if it was a source for Panama and Arcoma, but Wister Lake was a source for water for Wister and Poto. And, you know, the chicken factories are piping that chicken waste into the lake. They were. I think there's been steps to clean it up. But before the 70s, you had a lot of this going on. You'd have waste and sludge going into oceans and lakes. You would have factories, you know, just full throttle just funneling their smoke and their smog into the air. So in 1962, you had a book come out by a woman who was dying of breast cancer, and it was a book that exposed the threat of DDT, which was a pesticide, and other pesticides on birds and other animals. So this led to the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, in 1970. Now, this was proposed by a Republican president, Richard Nixon, and then it was backed by a Democratic-controlled Congress. And this agency was given the responsibility of enforcing the nation's environmental laws and fining companies or firms that violated those laws. I think we're all pretty much aware of that, right? The EPA. Today you'll hear about the EPA in the last 10 to 15 years has passed regulations so that manufacturers of cars like Ford and Chevy and all those companies, there is a level that the cars, their exhaust cannot emit so much carbon and other elements, cannot exceed a certain level. They've they're continuing to improve the regulation of contaminants or waste that go into the land, into the water, or into the air. Now, those of you living in Panama, isn't there a big AES plant outside of Panama?
Yes.
And that was built probably about, what, 30 years ago? Are any of you familiar with, has there been a, has AES been pretty good about keeping the regulations, or have they had to have they been warned? Does anybody know?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I would guess that they have tried to keep all the environmental rules and laws. So land, water, and air. And there's usually a symbol with like 3 arrows, kind of make a triangle. And it talks about reducing, recycling, and reusing. The 3 RE or RE words that are very common and well known when it comes to protecting the environment. So in relation to soil pollution, it would be reducing fertilizers and pesticides. Any of you come from families where your parents were pretty self-conscious about not buying any vegetables or fruit where fertilizers or pesticides were used?
I don't think so.
Don't think so?
Maybe my grandma.
Maybe your grandma. Okay. But, you know, we're seeing now more fertilizers being produced. For example, the bug guy who comes to my house to spray for bugs says that, I think I shared this already once, that the stuff he sprays is non-toxic, and he sprays it in there where my rabbit, anybody remember his name?
No.
Herbie.
Mr. Baines,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have an appointment. I have to go to some lady.
Okay, who is this?
Lori?
Rory?
Yes.
Okay,
Bye.
have fun. Did you say a dentist appointment?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, fun stuff. So he sprays this stuff in the house that'll kill bugs, but it won't kill Herbie. That's good. We like Herbie. He brings us joy. He's like almost like a therapy rabbit. Then recycling, when it comes to soil pollution, recycling paper, recycling plastics. We don't want plastics sitting out in the landfill. because they don't break down for a long time. So recycling paper, recycling plastics, other materials that would just sit in landfills. Oklahoma is not, as a state, we don't have strict recycling laws like some states on the East and West Coast, where you get different colored containers. And like blue, you have to put your plastics in, and yellow, you put your glass in, and I don't know, green, you put your newspapers in. And if you don't recycle, if somehow they find out you threw away some plastics, you would be fined. So I do imagine, though, that that will eventually reach Oklahoma. And then reusing materials. Maybe one of your plants dies, and instead of going out and digging up new dirt and planting a new plant, use the dirt that the other plant was in. I don't know. I'm just trying to think there of how you would reuse those materials. Tearing down an old barn and using the wood to build furniture that looks like an antique furniture. Something like that. So, and they will use these three things: reducing, recycling, and reusing, for water as well as air pollution. So, and then when it comes to soil pollution, another thing is deforestation. I'm not sure that I completely agree that we're losing forests at an alarming rate, because, you know, drive down from Panama or Arcoma into the Ouachita Mountains and you see small trees growing up all over the place. So, but there is some concern that we're cutting down too many trees and it's causing erosion, pollution, loss of topsoil. So they do emphasize planting trees. But this is what I'm thinking. Don't you have to dig up the tree in one place to plant it somewhere else? I don't know. I'm not an environmental expert, but I do think we need to be, you know, responsible when it comes to, you know, especially with big companies. There should be regulations. We don't want people dumping toxic waste into our lakes and oceans. Soil conservation. Here's another one that talks about controlling soil pollution. There needs to be a proper disposal of industrial and agricultural wastes. Recycling and recovery of materials. And again, fertilizers and pesticides. So, protecting our water resources. Some of the things that we are familiar with. Next time you go to the restroom there in your school, try to read on the toilet if you can, if it uses 1 gallon of water per flush or one or 2 pints. You know, they've come up with toilet technology where we're flushing less water per flush. Isn't that good to know? Aren't you all excited now about your next trip to the bathroom?
Not really.
Keep pipes and appliances in good condition. hopefully before you go to college, you have learned how to use your dryer. And what is that little screen that you pull out to keep clear in your dryer? Yes, the lint trap. And you know, if you don't clean that trap out, it's not going to dry as good, and you're going to lose more you're going to use more electricity, and eventually your dryer will wear out faster than if you had kept your lint trap clean. So keep that lint trap clean. Maybe you can start collecting the lint and make a big lint ball, and it'll be the biggest lint ball in the Guinness Book of World Records. I'm sure there is a lint ball in the Guinness Book of World Records. I know there's a biggest rubber band ball.
I've not seen that yet.
Did you say there was a lint ball?
No, I said that'd be weird. I could do it. I used to save it because you can start fires with it really easily.
Now, as far as conserving water, and there was this, I saw these people who had made it to where when their toilet flushed, not all the water, but no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. They had made this container to collect rainwater, and that's how they filled their toilet up, was with rainwater.
Whatever works.
Do what?
And whatever works.
And then somehow I saw somebody, they were recycling, it seemed like toilet water, to water their plants. Anyway, I can't remember for sure. But they're fertilizing it. So they're coming up with a lot of ways to conserve water, keep it cleaner, recycling it, reusing it. And then there's been a lot of regulations and very unique things to conserve and save our air. So, for example, this says that 87% of Americans spend their time indoors. Indoor air pollutant levels are 100 times higher than outdoor air levels. So you'll want to use, if you have an air conditioner, you'll probably, it'd probably be better for you and the environment to get one of those little bit more expensive 3-month air filters that will get out all these things here: microbes, viruses, bacteria, allergens, smoke, pollen, dust mites, and VOCs, which are gases emitted by adhesives like glue, paints, and some fabrics. Better air quality keeps your heating and air conditioning components from corrosion, microbials, dirt, and debris. So you can get those really cheap, flimsy air filters for like 4 of them for $4, but they only are for a month and they're really thin. And go with the 1 inch thick, or maybe it's about ½ an inch thick, maybe almost 1 inch thick, 3-month air filter that gets all those things out. You have to pay about $12, but hey, aren't your lungs worth it? One final thing that in this section, concerning the environment that we hear a lot about is global warming. And our textbook does mention that there is differences of opinion. There are climate change people who really believe it's a really serious thing, and we've even had some of our government leaders say that we only have like 12 years left before the earth is destroyed. And then you have those who think that there is no threat at all from man-made pollution. But you and I will hear that for the rest of our lives in every presidential election. So climate change and global warming, temperatures rising. There's a little graph on the bottom of page 457 that shows how in the last 160 years, the average temperature on the surface of the earth has risen 1.5 degrees. Any questions on the environment?
No. Yes, sir.
All right, so let's go back to chapter 14 and let me tell you what's going to be on the test for chapter 14 and 15. And then we'll have some time for the class project, and if you don't need that, we'll be done.
When is the test?
The test is not until December,
Yeah.
but I'm just really trying to stay on the ball this time.
Okay.
So I think I said you'll want to know about appellate and original jurisdiction on page 418.
Page what?
418. We're in chapter 14 right now. And you'll want to know that a court's opinion is more important than its decision, the bottom of page 419. I don't think you need to know about all the different types of opinions, except for know the majority and the dissenting opinion. Basically, if the court voted 7-2, the majority opinion would be the 7 judges and the dissenting opinion would be the 2 judges against it. That's on page 420. Know the difference between criminal and civil law, page 423. Those two things are not highlighted, but they are in italics.
What page?
What?
What page did you say?
423.
Is the what?
Criminal and civil law. And there is a slide on that, so that'll help you too.
Okay.
You will want to know that federal judges are nominated by the president and must be approved by the Congress. That would be on page 425 through 427. Basically, remember that we don't elect judges on the federal level except for our state judges. Actually, we don't elect them. We just vote yes or no to keep them. But it's going to mainly be about the Supreme Court and the federal courts. That the president nominates them and the Congress must approve them. On page 431, I want you to know what precedent means.
421,
431.
31.
And it's in that table 14.2. Precedent is a previous court decision that informs and influences present day court decisions. There's also some information about it on 432. Then know what on pages 437 through 442, know what judicial review, judicial restraint, and judicial activism are. So basically that section that begins on the bottom of page 437, judicial power and democratic government.
Okay.
And in chapter 15, know what laissez-faire economics is, page 448. I think I said you need to know the I would like for you to know on the bottom of page 453 and then 454, the three waves of regulation reform became a very prominent part of our government. So the first wave is at the bottom of page 453, and then the next two waves are on page 454.
Where?
The only thing I want you to know from today's section is know that the FDA, page 456, was created in 1970.
Okay.
Do you all think that was before I was born or after I was born?
After.
Oh, that hurts. I was born in 71, so it was before.
Question before.
Before, yes.
So it was for my bad.
I thought I looked younger than 48, but I guess I don't. On pages 458 through 461, know the three things that government promotes. They promote business, labor, and agriculture. And I think you need to know about the National Labor Relations Act of 1935 on page 460.
And what was that?
The National Labor Relations Act of 1935. It is in the section about promoting labor. And then you want to know the Homestead Act of 1862 which is under the promoting agricultural section on 461.
You said of 1962?
1862. I might have said 19, but it's 1862. Page 461.
Okay.
And then know what demand side economics are and supply side economics on pages 461 through 464. And then the only thing on the monetary section, page 469, know what inflation is.
Inflation.
So there's really no time to work on your thing, but do you have any questions?
What are you doing for that right now? Like, we've already read over it, we revised it, now what do we need to do?
Okay, so the committee has revised it and brought it back.
Back to our, we need to bring it back to our group again?
Bring it back to the whole house and now look over it again. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that next.
Yep.
Okay.
And I did send some links to you four in the executive branch. So that might help you over the weekend, get ready for your press conference. All right. And so next week we'll cover chapter 16. Then we have Thanksgiving break. And then we'll finish chapter 17 and that'll be it for our final test. Have a great weekend.
You too.